Sorry. Well, good evening, everyone. From Little Ship Club here, by the corner of Southwark Bridge in London. For those of you who are watching remotely, we hope to welcome you here in due course. We're very grateful to Roland Mann tonight to come and talk to us about up-to-date safety technology. For those of us who sail, the prospect of being stranded at sea is alarming. And the more aids that we have to enable us to be found, if necessary, the better. And Roland is going to talk to us about that. He has created a fantastic organisation called Suffolk Marine Safety, which, although with Suffolk in the name, actually covers the whole of the east and south coasts. So I will hand over to you. Thank you very much indeed.
Tiny bit of background about me. I actually used to work in Old Street for many years and around selling or supplying disaster recovery services into the city mainly for a company called Guardian IT that became SunGuard Availability Services. So my background is supplying services that people really hope never to use, and nothing has changed with what I do now. And I've had my own boat. I've had a Halberg Rassi since 36, since 2001. And I took my life raft in for service in 2010 and discovered when I went to pick it up that I'd had to go to a different site to pick up the raft because the sail had fallen through on the business. So, and they'd gone back to their old premises. So one way or another, I ended up buying the business, and that was in 2013. And I was ready not to be in the corporate world anymore. And I've loved running this business for the last 10 years or so. It's still a very small business. There are only 9 staff, but we're probably 5 or 6 times the revenue that we were back then. And as Ian said, we are very much a national business, and we operate all around the UK. And we supply both to leisure and to commercial companies. So what I've been asked to talk about today is electronic safety equipment, and I want to try and just give you a feel for the equipment available and how you can make it fit into your strategy. So what for dealing with emergencies, and that will depend on the type of boat you have and the type of sailing you do and what you do at sea. But there are lots of things here. And some of what I'm talking about you will know about already, but I want to start with EPIRBs and technology that's been around for a while and show how it builds. The aims of all the devices I'm going to talk about are to notify distress, one way or another. They will enable pinpoint location as well as telling the wider world and rescue services about the issue. They also help to reassure the casualty that help is coming, and some even more than others now. And one of the key things is they hasten the rescue because of the easy finding of the casualty. That reduces the risk of things like hypothermia and other things that lead to potential illness or death. And these technologies, some of them are specifically designed to help recover MOBs, man overboards. I was going to say, if you've got questions as we go along, we'll keep it reasonably informal and just ask as I go, so don't save things up at the end. So I'm going to look at EPIRBs, PLBs and AIS transponders, and then we're going to look at how they're beginning to combine together into devices, and then also look at electronic flares and how they fit into a distress strategy, and then look at some of the other devices that are now coming forward that you might want to consider that aren't specifically marine necessarily. So just to start with EPIRBs, stands for Electronic Emergency Position Indicating Radio Beacon, which describes exactly what it does. And this slide will build, I'll let you watch it, but this is basically how it works. So it's transmitting at 4:06 when it's activated.
Is it activated as soon as it hits salt water, or do you have to do something to activate it?
Most modern EPIRBs, and all modern EPIRBs sold within the UK, will activate in contact with salt water. There are some countries, and historically New Zealand was one, which wouldn't allow self-activating EPIRBs. But an EPIRB, not a PLB, but an EPIRB will activate on contact with water.
Does that mean there's a lot of false alarms then that get wet?
Not as many as you'd think. I do have a friend who had one that went off because it was in the companionway and a wave went down companionway. So if you're deciding where to place it on a boat, don't put it directly under the hatch or something like that. So to summarise this, basically the EPIRB is transmitting. I could use a pointer, couldn't I? Help. So the EPIRB has been activated either manually or when it's put in the water. It's transmitting up to a satellite here that recognises it. This Cosmos SARSAT system I'll talk about a little bit more in a moment, but it will actually triangulate a position as well. I then notify the rescue centre, which is Falmouth if it's a UK registered EPIRB, who will then notify the rescue services. The EPIRB, modern EPIRBs will also have a GPS, so once it has a GPS-enabled position, it will transmit that up to the rescue centre as well. Does that make sense to everybody? So to summarise that, links via satellite, it uses the Cosmos SARSAT system, which is it's actually US-Soviet originally satellite network of satellites. There's a homing beacon also, which enables which is available for helicopters and the lifeboats to actually home in on the beacon. That transmits at 121 megahertz. And then there's a built-in GPS, and also EPIRBs will typically have a high-intensity strobe as well, so that they're flashing people who see them in the water. And you would normally, if you were in a life raft, you would normally activate it and float it outside the life raft, and there will be a lanyard on the EPIRB to enable you to do that. And this diagram just summarises the satellite system. There's two sets of satellites. There's the LEOSAR satellites that deal with the poles, and then there's the GeoSAR satellites, which are these ones that deal with everything from 70 degrees to 70 degrees north and south. So modern EPIRBs typically have a 10-year battery life. Now, those of you who've got EPIRBs that you bought more than 3 or 4 years ago will have a 5-year battery life, or 6 perhaps. And therefore, every 5 or 6 years it will need to be serviced and the battery replacing, which from an economic point of view now brings you a dilemma, because when that battery is replaced, it will be replaced with another 5 or 6 year battery, whereas you could buy a new one that will have a 10-year battery life. And it will also probably have a more advanced GPS, which with a 66 or even a 72 channel receiver, which will mean that it will get a fix quicker, so that the transmission of your position will be quicker. As I say, they have a lanyard connected to the life raft, and it floats and auto-activates on immersion.
What do you do with your old EPIRB if you want to upgrade to a 10-year battery, do you offer a recycling scheme or?
We will get it recycled for you. We'll take the battery out and put the battery through our normal battery recycling and dispose of the others through normal electronic disposal. So we can do that for you.
So just the battery or the material that the item is made out of as well?
So the battery specifically needs to be removed so that when it's being disposed of, it doesn't accidentally transmit. So before then, it's disposed of in the same way that you would dispose of a microwave or any other electronic device, dispose of it through Suffolk disposal. They will break it down for its component parts, like they do with other things. But the batteries, they go off for recycling as well.
You can't just swap a 5-year battery for a 10-year battery.
No, unfortunately. And I'm going to talk. Most of you will have Cat 2 EPIRBs, which are EPIRBs which are just mounted on a bracket like this, and you can put them in a grab bag and take them with you, but they're not in a float-free housing. I'm going to talk in a moment about an EPIRB in a float-free housing. And this is a particular EPIRB, but they are very easy to activate, either using the button. And it's also worth remembering that you wouldn't only use this if you were abandoning ship. It's perfectly legitimate, for example, to activate your EPIRB in a man overboard situation or any situation where you want help to identify exactly where you are. So basically, pretty straightforward. Activate it, press the button, or just throw it in the water. So I'm now going to talk about Cat 1 EPIRBs, which is basically an EPIRB that's in a float-free housing. Has anybody got one of these out of interest? Generally, most people on leisure boats don't use them. They are a requirement for commercial ships. They're a requirement for fishing boats now, in 2016, because of the risk of the boat being capsized if it snags its gear. And I think if I were doing an ocean crossing or something, I would consider having one of these as well as a Cat 1 EPIRB. One of the, they're there in case you don't have time to grab the EPIRB and activate it, and the most likely instance of that is if you were run down. So it's a combination of an EPIRB, an HRU, which is this, which you may be familiar with on life rafts, but basically it's a device that when it goes underwater will release, it usually cuts a rope, it will release the EPIRB allowed to float free, and a housing. So the HRU activates at about between 1 and 4 meters. Typically it's about 1.5 meters, is what they're designed to do. And the device will be released and will float up. And it will automatically activate, and it will hit away.
Isn't the challenge on a yacht though that trying to find somewhere to put it that will not accidentally release because you're sort of knocked down but you don't end up sinking in a storm?
Yeah.
Or, being inside where the boat actually floats for another 2 days before.
The normal place that I've seen them successfully used on a sailing boat is cable tied to the push bit. That seems to work quite well, because it tends to be reasonably out of the way. The other thing that's important is that the housing will have a handle or a lever that you can use to remove it quickly and take it out with you. So don't think of it as only available as a float-free device. It is very much designed so that you can grab it. So normally what you see is people put it on the cable tied to the push bit facing inwards so that they can see the lever and grab it. But typically people who use these would have at least a PLB and possibly a Cat1, Cat2 EPUB as well. That covers what I've said about when you might use it. So PLBs. Does anybody have a PLB? Yeah. Stands personal location beacon, and it's basically a compact wearable EPUB. It's exactly the same technology. It's using the same SARSAT, compact SARSAT network. It has the 121 megahertz homing beacon, and it even has a strobe on it typically, although not nearly as bright. But the main difference is it doesn't float, and it won't activate on contact with water, so it has to be manually activated. Modern PLBs typically are 5, 6 or 7 year life. They transmit for 24 hours, that's an error on the slide. Most EPUBs will transmit for 48 hours, but PLBs will only transmit for 24 hours. Again, 66 or 72 channel GPS, no lanyard, and these were meant to be crossed out, but there is no lanyard connected to Wi-Fi, and it doesn't auto-activate on immersion. This is the first of the new technologies, which has started to emerge in the last 3 years, and initially came on PLBs, which is a system from Galileo, which is called Return Link Service. And what it means is on the device there's an extra, this is one that's got it here, there's a little blue light, or in this instance sometimes a digital screen. And basically when it's received, it transmits back to this, and when that light on the screen indicates, it means you know your emergency beacon has been recognised and seen. So when it comes back to this idea of giving reassurance to the casualty that help's coming, that's a really nice added plus. So the next thing I want to talk about is AIS transponders, which is, again, it's now an entirely different technology to PLBs and EPUBs. AIS stands for Automatic Identification System. Presumably everybody here who has a boat has AIS these days, and nearly everybody will transmit on AIS as well. All this does is effectively it creates a target when activated on a chart plotter, and it creates that symbol specifically. And some modern, most chart plotters from about 5 years ago or less also have an additional bit of software that causes them to mark up to notify an AIS, an MOB is active when that transmission is made. And it'll provide the distance and bearing to a person and their position on the chart plotter. However, there is added value now on some of these. And I'm going to talk about this one specifically because it's the market, the main product, well, the only product on the market at the moment is the Ocean Signal MOB1. And how many of you have got these? Right, okay. So it fits in a life jacket. When it's activated, remember it's using VHF and is at sea level, so the range is pretty limited. In good conditions, it's up to about 5 miles. This particular device, you can program your vessel's MMSI into it. And that means that when it's then automatically activated, it will alert on your DSC radio. and it'll do two things. One, it creates an alarm because it's alerting, but it'll also put a lat long on that radio as well. So you'll be able to see the lat long of the casualty, as well as seeing them on the chart plotter as a target. And if the casualty then pulls this down, if they're conscious and able to, that will extend that alert to all ships. So everybody will then get that DSC alert and position. So if they don't, for example, have AIS, they will still actually have an alert and the position of the casualty, providing they've got DSC. And again, it's got a strobe light, so it provides it will aid the life jacket light that should be on the life jacket as well if it's at night. So schematically, the MOB transmits, it gets a position from a GPS satellite, it creates a radio alert, and it creates an image on your chart plotter. And again, having a very modern GPS means it will get a fix pretty quickly, typically in less than 2 or 3 minutes, and often quicker than that. So it'll operate for 24 hours, has a 7-year battery life, and comes with a 5-year warranty. Now, this is the reason why I really only talk about this product at the moment, is it's fitted in a life jacket. And the way it's fitted in the life jacket is it's attached to the oral tube, and then there is a ribbon that's passed around the bladder of the life jacket. And that ribbon then pulls off the activation clip, which is this, when the jacket inflates. Now, it's not 100% reliable. And the first message I would say to you is check that your life jacket is approved to have the MOB1 installed. And some life jackets actually can't take it at all because of the way they're designed. But do check that you have a life jacket that is approved, which massively increases the risk of it actually firing. But also tell your crew and people that have it that if when their life jacket's inflated, it just looks crumpled up in this corner, they need to just pull that cord, and that will then activate the MOB1. It's just because it hasn't come off. And I'm only saying this because we service about 7,000 life jackets a year. We're seeing these things coming through our books all the time, and we just know from experience that A, they're not always fitted properly, and I would advise, if you can, get someone like us to fit them during the service, and B, not all life jackets do perform properly with them. But I'm not putting you off the product because it's an absolutely fantastic product.
Sorry, you said that this is the only product you ever talk about in this category. What's the distinction between this product and other AIS speakers? The fact that it's set off automatically or something different?
The fact that it has the DSC alert side of it,
right,
and the fact that it is approved for nearly all the major manufacturers of life jackets, whereas the others aren't.
So, and that's specifically the MOB1, or is there a brand name?
It's the Ocean Signal MOB1. Now, Ocean Signal is a British company that was based in Kent, but they've actually now were bought 3 or 4 years ago by ACR. So ACR do produce a version of the product, which is this one, which is actually using exactly the same technology. And this one does have DSC alert, but as you can see, it's quite a lot bulkier. And again, that hasn't been through the approvals process with nearly all of the manufacturers. And we found when trying to fit it, that because it sits on the side of the oral tube, it's then very difficult to pack the jacket afterwards. And as you can see on this chart, there are various other products, and I've not put this up particularly as a comparison, to say there are other products. But you can't buy most of these now in the UK, most of them being discontinued. Any questions on AIS?
So how does the pricing go between the AIS and the personal beacons?
They're not dissimilar in price. So a PLB is around 250 to 300 pounds. An AI transponder is about 250 pounds as well. But they are doing a different job. And this is where it starts to get interesting, because now we're just beginning to see, the last year or so, products coming out that combine these technologies. So on the PLB side, the original PLBs actually didn't have GPS. So and then we started to get PLBs with GPSs, and then PLBs with GPSs and RLS, and now we have PLBs with GPS, RLS, which was the return link service I mentioned, AIS, DSC, and near field communication. And that is this product, which is the PLB3. And you could treat this as a very advanced PLB or a very advanced AIS transponder, because it is effectively both. And we're also now seeing GPSs that come out with everything, the same technology as well. Although EPIRBs that come with the same technology as well. Although they don't have the DSC on the EPIRBs. Now the NFC bit basically enables you to program your MMSI and get other data from it about battery state and that sort of thing from your phone. So you can put an app on your phone. It's using NFC, which is the same technology as your watch uses for payment. And you can basically, as long as you hold the two side by side, you will then be able to interact with it. And that works also on this EPIRB 3 as well. So these are about £550 and they can be installed in a life jacket. However, they're only approved for a very small number of life jackets because it's so big. But the Spinbot 6D, for example, is one that it's approved for. I can't remember any others off the top of my head, but there's a couple of Mullion jackets that you can put this in. But I think it's worth considering, even if you don't decide to install it in a life jacket, if you kept it in a pocket, or just kept it as an alternative to a PLB, because with the AIS transponder in there, it will further aid people pinpointing your position. I think this is a video.
Is pleased to introduce you to the groundbreaking PLB3. As a first of its kind, the PLB3 includes capabilities previously unavailable in any PLB produced to date. The inclusion of AIS Distress Alert positions the PLB3 as a clear winner in the mariners' debate over whether to carry a personal locator beacon or an AIS man overboard beacon, otherwise known as a personal AIS. The PLB3 conveniently combines 406 MHz and AIS distress alerting, effectively negating the need for mariners to have to carry both PLB and AIS MOB when on the water. In addition to AIS and 406 MHz distress alerting, the PLB3 boasts features that include return link service, or RLS functionality, and introduces near field communication, or NFC capability. RLS provides the user with confirmation that their distress message has been received, and the addition of NFC represents a significant step forward in the evolution of PLBs, as it provides users with the world's first smartphone-connected PLB. As a result, users are able to interact with the product and access data that has never been so readily available before. The PLB3 is designed to install within a life jacket and activate upon inflation of the jacket. Installation is made simple using the included oral inflation tube clip to attach the PLB3 to the life jacket with a ribbon connected around the bladder of the life jacket. Once correctly installed, the action of the life jacket inflating triggers deployment of the antenna and activation of the beacon. Shorter rescue response times, paired with better location accuracy, are a cornerstone of the PLB3's development, as the AIS alert provides users with access to the most effective rescue resources available, while also boasting location accuracy within 10 meters. In situations where AIS-equipped vessels are not within range, the PLB3's GNSS receiver utilizes both the Galileo GNSS as well as the GPS satellite network, ensuring that anyone activating their PLB3 can expect their beacon to be located within 100 meters, 95% of the time within 3 minutes of the distress signal. As the world's first personal locator beacon to include AIS and the world's first PLB to include NFC, there is no need to justify why PLB3 should be your first choice.
Okay, very salesy, but it does help sum up what I've just said. So, EPIRB-3, effectively exactly the same technology, except it doesn't have the DSC. But I think that these are around 750 to 800 pounds, as opposed to a standard EPIRB, which is about 450 pounds. So you're paying quite a lot more for having the additional of AIS and RLS. It is going to start to become a requirement, though, for MCA-coded boats, etc., in due course, that they will have both functionalities in their eBirds. Has anybody got an electronic flare? No. Yeah. Okay. Basically, so electronic flares basically are LED devices. They will transmit for up to 6 hours, as opposed to 60 seconds for a distress flare, for a red hand flare. They're obviously much safer. There's no heat, there's no flames. Particularly, most life rafts come with hand flares and parachute rockets, but some with parachute rockets, most with hand flares. But as you may know, hand flares actually don't require oxygen to burn. They've got the oxygen built into the chemicals. So if you drop one in the water, it will continue to burn in the water, which means if you drop it near your life raft, it will potentially still burn a hole in your life raft. So I would definitely recommend considering an LED flare as an addition to the equipment pack in the life raft, and to put it in the grab bag. And the battery life on them is typically 7 to 10 years. And there are various makes that you could look at. Typically they have 360-degree view, which means they can be seen by helicopters. 6-hour battery life. You can vary the intensity of the signal. I would just have them on full power. At night, maximum range, but it can be up to 7 miles. That would be from a raised deck or a helicopter, as opposed to a vessel at the same height. And really good visibility. And they can also be, you can press a button to make it display an SOS signal as opposed to a normal flash. So how do electronic distress flares fit into, and other electronics fit into what were traditional flares? So parachute rockets are there solely to notify generally that you have an issue. They're not a pinpoint because they're up in the air and nobody can actually see where you are as a result of firing it. So if you wanted to say, I don't want pyrotechnics on board anymore, I would rather not have parachute rockets. If you've got a VHF and an EPIRB and a PLB and AIS, you've done a pretty good job of notifying the wider world that you have an issue. And I think you could potentially argue that not to have parachute rockets. An electronic distress flare doesn't help you in this instance at all. Red hand flares, which are their pinpoint flares, so this is where I am, I know you're looking for me. Basically, again, the electronic distress flare will help in that instance. But so will your EPIRB and your PLB because of the 125 signal, homing signal. But only then for vessels equipped with it, which will be aircraft and lifeboats. So an AIS transponder will definitely help, as well as an electronic distress flare. And finally, orange smoke flares, which can be either buoyant, which will burn for about 3 minutes, and you can just throw them overboard, so they're not hot, there are no flames, there's no risk with them, or handheld, but I always recommend the buoyant distress flares. The only thing that really replaces them is AIS, and I would recommend to people, if you're really keen to get rid of other flares, still keep buoyant smokes. I had an incident myself when I came out of Dartmouth in my own boat 4 or 5 years ago. Mayday on the radio, I went down below and I plotted it carefully, and the vessel was 150 yards from me in the rocks outside the harbour. If there'd been an orange smoke flare, I'd have been there straight away. So definitely have an orange smoke flare, even if you want to give up the other stuff. So finally, I just want to talk about some other safety devices. First one is Garmin InReach Mini. Has anybody heard of this? No? I think, hopefully I've got a video on this. So it's basically a two-way messaging system that uses satellites. So, right, I can't go back to that slide, but in summary, it's a two-way messaging system that has an SOS system that is constantly monitored by Garmin anywhere in the world, and they will report a sea incident to Falmouth or the local centre. So it will activate. It will alert people that you have an incident, but it's not a marine product as such. It's about £300, and you have to pay a subscription, typically about £15 a month for it to be monitored. So it's not actually cheaper either than the other technologies. But it is worth considering if you're interested in the two-way messaging, if you're severely, a long way offshore, it might be useful. You want to just be able to let people know that you're okay and where you are and what you're doing. And it backs up as an alert system. And the only other product I want to talk about very quickly is OLAS tags. And I think, do you have these? Yeah.
Yes, I do.
On your dog? I know someone's collar.
Yes, I do.
Yeah. So this is a tag that you can wear on your wrist, but you can also attach it to anything else you want to. And it basically, the technology is that it connects Bluetooth to an app on your phone. And when that Bluetooth connection is lost, your phone will then shout and say, "I've lost my connection," and provide a very loud alert. I'm assured that the app will override any muting or volume controls you've got. It will activate at full volume. There's no subscription provided, and they're typically about £50 each. So it's a relatively inexpensive solution. And here again is a little less advertorial, but still a video nonetheless.
We've just been testing OLAT out here in the solar. Now, it's a cost-effective portable manned overboard alarm to help us through rescue. And believe me, it really works. Simply download the OLAT app, and then you can wirelessly connect up to 8 OLAT tags to your mobile device. So imagine your mobile phone is attached to this tag by a tether. Now, if you fall overboard and go a certain distance, that tether is broken, and then your mobile alarm is set off at maximum volume. Now, the alarm man overboard drills, no matter how much you practice, do take time. So the first thing you should do is record where the incident occurred by pressing the mod button on the chart blocker. OLAT also records the GPS location and the time the incident occurred. Using that information, OLAT basically just points to the location where the crew fell in. It also gives you the bearing and the distance. So this is the end of April. The weather's actually pretty good, but I can tell you, after just 5 minutes in the water, I really started to deteriorate. Swimming became difficult. So time is absolutely of the essence. Now, OLAT must not replace your normal rescue procedures. So as soon as that accident happens, make sure you still come to the Coast Guard and press the DSP button. Now remember, when making that Mayday call, the Coast Guard will require 3 essential bits of information: where the incident occurred, the time of the incident, and your current position. And all that can be found by swiping your OLAT screen. As you can imagine, this could be a pretty stressful situation. So remembering all this information and getting it across on the radio is going to be tricky. But all you've got to do is press the VHF button, and you can read and call out word for word to the Coast Guard. But you know, the chances are you'll never need your nerve function. It's nice to know it's just running there in the background. So don't forget that OLAT is also a really useful navigation. It'll give you your speed and course over the ground, have a waypoint, and just watch the miles disappear as you head towards your new destination.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Roland. The speed with which technology changes to our benefit is huge. I, for one, have just realised that my main EPIRB is pretty ancient. Probably donate it to the Science Museum. But anyway, has anybody got any more questions?
I've got a life jacket that claims to have space for an EPIRB but doesn't yet have one in it. How do I confirm that it does support an EPIRB appropriately? And an EPIRB, is it the the PLB?
Yeah.
And confirm that the PLB3, which seems to be the one to get, will fit in that, and then have it fit in progression.
You could ask us, and we will look it up for you and check. Or you could go to the manufacturer, so ring the manufacturer. What life jacket is it? Do you know?
It's a Helly Hansen sales safe race, something like that.
Right. I don't know the answer to that off the top of my head, but I can find the answer for you. Yes.
What happens if you've got your phone round your neck in its waterproof case, and you fall over all with your phone round your neck? That's not going to do that, is it?
It's not going to help. Yeah,
No.
that's no. You need to leave it on the chart table, or decide whose phone it was going to be dedicated to. It will only link to one app, and you can have 8 tags linked up to a single app at a time. Hi.
If I'm near a situation where someone with an AIS perk goes into the water,
Yeah.
what am I going to hear? I'm guessing if I'm within a certain range, my DSC is going to go off. But how am I going to know what the AIS target is on my clock?
It's that, I don't know if you saw, there was a slide relatively near the beginning that had a little round, red round ring with a red cross through it. That is what the target will look like. And if you've got a fairly modern chart plotter, it will also say MOB active.
Right.
And you will, so that is how you should see it. And if the casualty has activated the all ships alert, and that has to be done manually because you don't want it accidentally going off and telling the whole world all the time, every time somebody inflates their life jacket, for example, then you will also get an alert on your DSC radio. So you know when your DSC radio starts buzzing and flashing, and then you say ignore or read, yeah, it'll come up there.
On the personal items in the AIS, you sort of had that they have the MSI. Have you got on them?
Yes.
Now, if you have that packed in a life jacket, doesn't that mean that, yeah, if you go on a different boat, effectively you need to have your life jacket unpacked, reprogrammed and done again?
Yeah, you do.
Although
the
obviously you may care about less about the inconvenience you cause, at least people are looking for you.
The MOD one has got a really clever little way of programming it. It's basically, it receives a flashing light, so you go onto your a laptop or a computer screen, download the app, type in your NMSI, and then you hold this up to the screen, and it will and the screen will flash code to it, and it will receive it and program it that way. Now that does mean if you want to reprogram it, you are going to have to at least open the jacket and then hold the whole jacket up to the screen for that to work. I think in due course there'll be a new version of this coming out which will have the capability that this has, where you can do it with your phone.
From outside the life jacket?
Yeah, from outside the life jacket.
Well, Roland, thank you so much. I'm sure that as you sort of sail in the next months and next year, there will be all sorts of questions that will spring to mind, and probably a need to review the equipment that we all have. Roland's left some cards here, so I know that if you pick those up and phone, you'll get fantastic service from him and his excellent staff. I know from personal experience how good they are. So thank you very, very much indeed.
Thank you.
Very grateful.